My husband told my mother-in-law in Korean that he got my sister pregnant, but they didn't know I was fluent. Hello everyone. Thank you for being here with me today. Before I begin my story, grab a warm cup of tea and get comfortable. I'd love to know what time of day you're watching this video. Please comment M for morning, A for afternoon, or E for evening. Now, let me take you into this story. The sound of porcelain clinking against the granite countertop usually soothed me. It was the sound of a Sunday dinner well executed, a home well kept, a life that, from the outside, looked perfectly polished. But that night, as I stood at the sink rinsing the rosemary residue from the roasting pan, the domestic hum of my kitchen shattered into a million jagged shards. My husband, Grant, was sitting at the dining table just 10 feet away. Across from him sat his mother, Mrs. Park, a woman who wore her disapproval like a mink coat, heavy, expensive, and suffocating. We had just finished a meal that took me 6 hours to prepare. Braised short ribs, sticky rice, and her favorite spicy cucumber salad. I had tried so hard. I always tried so hard. The meat was tough, Mrs. Park had said in English, pushing her plate away half-eaten. And too sweet. I had smiled, the practiced smile of a pharmacist who deals with difficult customers all day long, and cleared the table. I turned the faucet on, letting the warm water rush over my hands, creating a curtain of white noise. But I didn't turn it on all the way. I wanted to hear if they needed anything else. That was my mistake. Or perhaps, it was my salvation. Thinking the water masked their voices, and secure in the arrogance that I was just the ignorant American wife, they switched languages. They slipped into Korean, a language Grant had stopped teaching me years ago because he said I didn't have the ear for it. So, Mrs. Park's voice was lower now, sharp and guttural. Did you fix the problem? Or are we still waiting for a miracle? I froze. My hands stopped scrubbing the pan. The water ran over my wrists, but I didn't feel the heat. I felt a cold dread seeping into my marrow. It's not a problem, Yama, Grant replied. His voice wasn't stressed. It was smug. It's a situation. And yes, it's confirmed. She's 8 weeks along. The plate in my hand slipped an inch. I gripped it so hard my knuckles turned white. 8 weeks. 8 weeks, his mother scoffed. And that woman in the kitchen? Does she suspect anything? She looks at you with those cow eyes. It makes me sick. Valery? Grant laughed. It was a sound I used to love, a sound that now made bile rise in my throat. Valery doesn't suspect a thing. You know her. She's simple. She thinks I'm working late on the Thompson project. She thinks Melanie is just going through a phase and needs support. Valery is stupid, Mom. She'll never know the baby in Melanie's belly is mine until I'm ready to take half her assets and leave. My world stopped. The kitchen, the smell of roasting meat, the hum of the refrigerator, it all vanished. Melanie. My sister. My baby sister. The one I had bailed out of debt 3 times. The one I had comforted through bad breakups. The one who sat at this very table last Thanksgiving and toasted to my marriage. Grant got my sister pregnant. And the money? Mrs. Park asked, her tone shifting from disdain to greed. You need to secure the money before the divorce. That inheritance from her grandmother. The lake house. I'm working on it, Grant assured her. I told her we need to refinance the lake house for a business investment. She trusts me. She'll sign whatever I put in front of her. She always does. I stood there, staring at my reflection in the dark window above the sink. The woman looking back at me seemed to be disintegrating. My chest felt caved in, as if someone had taken a sledgehammer to my ribs. Every sacrifice, every late night working extra shifts at the pharmacy to pay Grant's student loans, every time I defended Melanie to our parents, it all flashed before my eyes in a sickening montage. They weren't just betraying me. They were liquidating me. They were laughing at me in a language they thought I couldn't understand. "Be careful," Mrs. Park warned. "If she finds out." "She won't," Grant cut her off. "She only knows how to say hello and thank you. To her, we're probably discussing the weather. Just keep smiling, Mom. We're almost at the finish line." I turned off the faucet. The silence in the kitchen was sudden and deafening. "Valerie?" Grant called out in English, his voice shifting instantly back to the warm, loving husband tone I had woken up to for 7 years. "Everything okay in there, babe? We're ready for dessert." I looked down at the roasting pan. I could walk out there and smash it over his head. I could scream until my throat bled. I could flip the table and reveal that I knew exactly what they were saying. But then I remembered the word he used. Assets. Inheritance. If I screamed now, I was just the crazy, emotional wife. If I screamed now, they would close ranks. Grant would hide the money. Melanie would play the victim. They would gaslight me until I questioned my own sanity. No. Screaming was too easy. Screaming was for victims. I took a deep breath, inhaling the scent of the dish soap, forcing my heart rate to slow down. I wasn't just a wife anymore. I was a woman who had been declared war upon in her own home. I needed to get out of the room before I vomited. "Just a second." I called back, my voice cracking slightly. I think I burned my hand." "Oh, be careful," Mrs. Park said in English, her voice dripping with fake concern. "So clumsy." I dropped the sponge and walked toward the hallway. I didn't go to the dining room. I went straight for the bathroom, locking the door behind me with shaking hands. This was it. The moment my life ended, and a new, darker one began. I slid down the cold-tiled wall of the bathroom until I hit the floor. The moment my knees touched the bath mat, the dam broke. A guttural sob ripped through my chest, but I clamped both hands over my mouth to stifle the sound. I couldn't let them hear me. I couldn't give them the satisfaction of knowing they had broken me. My sister. My husband. The images flooded my mind, unbidden and grotesque. Grant's car parked at my parents' house when he said he was at a site visit. Melanie's sudden glow recently, which I had attributed to a new skincare routine. The way they looked at each other at the barbecue last month, a look I had dismissed as familial affection. I felt physically sick. I crawled over to the toilet and retched, my body trying to purge the poison of their betrayal. After a few minutes, the heaving stopped. I sat back against the vanity cabinet, shivering. I looked at the mirror. The woman staring back was pale, eyes red-rimmed, mascara smudged beneath the lower lashes. I looked pathetic. I looked exactly like the stupid woman Grant had described to his mother. Valerie is simple. That sentence echoed in my head, bouncing off the tiled walls. Is that what I was? Simple? Because I loved him? Because I trusted him? Because I believed that marriage meant partnership? I thought about my job. I manage a pharmacy that fills 300 prescriptions a day. I deal with insurance companies, complex drug interactions, and irate customers. I catch mistakes that doctors make. I am meticulous. I am sharp. I am not simple. Grant had mistaken my kindness for stupidity. He had mistaken my loyalty for blindness. I stood up and turned on the cold water tap. I splashed my face, scrubbing away the ruined makeup. I watched the gray water swirl down the drain, taking the old Valerie with it. The trusting wife was gone. She died on the kitchen floor. I reached for my makeup bag. I applied fresh concealer to hide the redness. I put on a layer of powder to mask the pallor. I reapplied my lipstick, a bold, defiant red. I looked at myself one last time. You are a vault, I whispered to the reflection. You are a steel trap. They want a performance? Give them the performance of a lifetime. I unlocked the door. My legs felt heavy, like I was wading through wet concrete, but I forced one foot in front of the other. Walking back into the dining room felt like walking onto a stage where everyone else knew the lines but me, except now, I had stolen the script. Grant was pouring tea for his mother. He looked up as I entered, his face arranging itself into that handsome, boyish smile that had charmed me 7 years ago. "You okay, hon?" he asked. "Burn bad?" "It stings a little," I lied, my voice steady. "But I ran it under cold water." "It's fine." I walked over to the table. I didn't sit down. I stood behind Grant's chair. I placed my hands on his shoulders. I felt his muscles tense slightly beneath my touch. Was it guilt? Or just annoyance? "I'm sorry about the meat, Mrs. Park," I said, looking directly at her. "I'll try a different recipe next time." "Maybe you can teach me?" Her eyes narrowed, searching my face for any sign of a crack. "Cooking is an art, Valerie. Not everyone has the talent for it. Just like language." It was a dig. A test. I smiled, widening my eyes in feigned innocence. "You're so right. I guess I'm just lucky I have other talents. Like taking care of things." I squeezed Grant's shoulders, digging my thumbs in just hard enough to be uncomfortable. Grant was just telling me how much he admires how I handle our finances. "Right, honey?" Grant shifted, pulling away from my grip. Yeah, of course." Actually, I continued, moving to slice the pear tart I had bought from the bakery, the only thing on the table I hadn't made. I was thinking, since Melanie is having such a hard time lately, maybe we should have her over for dinner soon? I feel like she's hiding something. You know how she gets. The air left the room. Grant choked on his tea. Mrs. Park stiffened. Why do you think that?" Grant stammered, coughing into his napkin. "Oh, just a sister's intuition," I said breezily, sliding a plate of tart in front of his mother. "She seems different. Maybe she met someone?" "I hope so. She deserves a good man. Someone honest." I watched them exchange a panicked glance. It was fleeting, a microsecond of terror, but I saw it. And God help me, it felt good. It was a tiny drop of power in an ocean of pain. "I'm sure she's fine," Grant said quickly, too quickly. "Let's just enjoy the dessert." "Yes," I agreed, taking my seat and picking up my fork. "Let's enjoy it. While it lasts." I took a bite of the tart. It tasted like ash, but I swallowed it. I swallowed it all. To understand why I didn't scream, why I didn't flip the table, you have to understand Melanie. You have to understand the ecosystem of my family, where I was the soil and Melanie was the flower that sucked every nutrient out of me. I am 6 years older than Melanie. From the moment she was born, the dynamic was set in stone. She was the miracle baby after my mother had 2 miscarriages. I was the responsible one. "Valerie, give the doll to Melanie, you're the big sister." "Valerie, don't be selfish, Melanie needs braces more than you need computer camp." "Valerie, cancel your plans, Melanie is sick." It wasn't just sibling rivalry. It was a systematic conditioning. My parents, Robert and Susan, created a world where Melanie's happiness was the sun, and the rest of us just orbited around it, hoping not to get burned. I remember my high school graduation. I was valedictorian. I had worked so hard, studying late into the night while working at the diner to save for college. I stood at the podium, looking for my parents in the crowd. They weren't there. When I got home, clutching my diploma, I found them in the living room. Melanie, then 12, was sobbing on the couch because a boy at school had called her chubby. My parents were flanking her, feeding her ice cream, cooing over her. "Where were you?" I had asked, the diploma crumpling in my hand. Oh, Val, my mother sighed, not even looking up. Melanie was having a crisis. We couldn't leave her alone. You know how sensitive she is. You're strong. You don't need us holding your hand to walk across a stage. I'm strong. That was always the excuse. Because I didn't break, they assumed I didn't feel. But the worst betrayal, the precursor to this nightmare with Grant, happened in college. I was dating a guy named Kyle. He was pre-med, kind, and looking back, probably the love of my young life. We had been together for 2 years. I brought him home for Christmas break. Melanie was 18 then. She had just dropped out of her first semester of community college and was finding herself. She found herself right in Kyle's lap. I walked in on them in the guest room on Christmas Eve. It destroyed me. But what destroyed me more was my parents' reaction. When I demanded they kick Kyle out, when I screamed at Melanie, my father sat me down. Valerie, look at her, he pointed to Melanie, who was weeping dramatically into a pillow. She's fragile. She didn't mean to hurt you. She seeks validation. You have a future, Val. You have your degree. Melanie has nothing. Don't take this away from her. Be the bigger person. Be the bigger person. The mantra of my life. The phrase that translates to, let us abuse you and don't you dare complain. So I swallowed it. I broke up with Kyle, obviously, but I forgave Melanie. I let her cry on my shoulder about how guilty she felt. I paid her rent when she moved to the city. I bought her a car when hers broke down. I became the pharmacist, the steady rock, the bank account. And Grant? Grant knew all of this. When I met Grant, I told him everything. I told him about the graduation, about Kyle, about the crushing weight of being the strong one. He had held me, stroked my hair, and said, that ends now. With me, you're the priority. I will never let her hurt you again. He lied. He didn't just let her hurt me. He became the weapon she used to deliver the killing blow. Sitting in my car the morning after the dinner, driving to the pharmacy, these memories replayed in my mind. I realized that my parents had trained me for this moment. They had trained me to accept betrayal as a form of love. They had groomed me to be the perfect victim. But they forgot one thing. I wasn't that 20-year-old girl anymore. I was a 38-year-old woman who managed millions of dollars in inventory and navigated complex legal regulations daily. I controlled the flow of medicine that could heal or kill. Melanie had always been jealous of me. Jealous of my grades, my stability, my money. But she never wanted to do the work. She just wanted the prize. Grant was the ultimate prize, my husband, my life. Taking him was the ultimate win for her. My phone buzzed on the passenger seat. A text from Melanie. Hey sis. Are you free tomorrow? Need to talk to you about something huge. Love you. Zoxo. Huge, I muttered to the empty car. Yeah, I bet. I didn't text back. Not yet. I needed to act normal. I needed to be the doormat they expected. I pulled into the pharmacy parking lot. I looked at the building. This was my domain. Here, I was in charge. Here, nobody lied to me without consequences. I wiped a stray tear from my cheek. Okay, Melanie, I whispered. You want my life? You want my husband? You can have him. But you're not getting a dime of the life I built. Not one single cent. I checked my bank app on my phone. The joint savings account. The number was lower than I remembered. A lot lower. My heart hammered. The war had already started, and I was losing ground. Grant was supposed to be my safe harbor. When we met 7 years ago, he was charming, ambitious, an architect with a vision. He swept me off my feet in a whirlwind of gallery openings and late-night architectural tours of the city. He made me feel sophisticated. He made me feel seen. But the ambition faded quickly after the wedding ring was on my finger. He started complaining about his firm. His bosses didn't understand his genius. He quit to start his own practice. I supported him. I paid the mortgage. I paid the health insurance. I funded his startup costs, which mostly seemed to involve buying expensive drafting tables and taking potential clients out for 3 martini lunches. For the last 2 years, Grant hadn't brought in a single paying project. Not one. He spent his days networking and his nights decompressing with video games or going to the gym. I never complained. I was the supportive wife. I was investing in his dream. I wanted so badly to bond with his family, to be the perfect daughter-in-law. That's why I started learning Korean. It began as a small idea for our 5th anniversary, a surprise speech to his parents in their native tongue. I didn't tell Grant. I wanted to see the look on his face when I fluently thanked his parents for raising him. I signed up for an intensive online course. For 3 years, while Grant snored beside me or stayed up late working in his office, I was in the guest room with headphones on, repeating phrases, learning grammar, practicing intonation. 안녕하세요. Hello. 사랑해요. I love you. 기시키. Son of a bitch. I learned that last one from a drama I watched to practice listening skills. I never thought I'd need to use it to describe my husband. The irony was suffocating. The very act of love, learning his language to bridge the gap between us, became the tool that revealed the canyon separating us. If I hadn't loved him enough to learn Korean, I would still be blissfully ignorant. I would be cooking him dinner right now, worrying about his stress levels, excited to be an aunt to my sister's baby. Ignorance really is bliss. But knowledge? Knowledge is power. And right now, knowledge was the only weapon I had. I sat in my office at the pharmacy, staring at a bottle of pills. I needed to focus. I needed to reevaluate Grant, not as the man I loved, but as a parasite. He was lazy. I knew that. But I hadn't realized he was malicious. I thought back to the last few months. The signs were there. Neon flashing signs I had chosen to ignore. The new cologne. Santal 33. Expensive. He said a client gave it to him. The gym membership. He was suddenly obsessed with his abs. The networking events that went until 2 a.m. The way he guarded his phone like it contained the nuclear codes. And the way he encouraged me to help Melanie. She's lonely, Val, he would say, massaging my shoulders. Why don't you send her some money for that car repair? You know Mom and Dad are tight on cash. Melanie needs us. Us. He was funding his affair with my sister using my money. He was sleeping with her, probably in my house, probably in my bed when I was at work, and then coming home to eat the food I cooked. A knock on my office door startled me. It was Sarah, one of my pharmacy techs. Valerie? You okay? You've been staring at that aspirin bottle for 20 minutes. I looked up. Sarah was young, sharp, and fiercely loyal. She had gone through a messy divorce last year. She knew the look of a woman on the edge. Sarah, I said, my voice steady but low. If you wanted to track someone's spending without them knowing, but you share a bank account, how would you do it? Sarah didn't even blink. She closed the door and sat down. You don't track the joint account, Val. You look for the leaks. Cash withdrawals. Credit card statement transfers to apps like Venmo or PayPal. That's where the dirt is. Why? I took a deep breath. Hypothetically. Just curious. Sarah looked at me, her eyes softening. Hypothetically? You check the trash folder in the email associated with the bank account. They always delete the transaction notifications, but they forget to empty the trash. I nodded. Thanks, Sarah. Anytime, boss. And Val? She paused at the door. If you need a lawyer, I have a shark. He eats cheating husbands for breakfast. I forced a smile. I'll keep that in mind. As soon as she left, I logged into our joint email account. Grant was sloppy. He was arrogant. He assumed I respected his privacy too much to snoop. I went to the trash folder. Your transfer of $500 to Melanie Thompson via Venmo was successful. Your transfer of $200 to Melanie Thompson via Venmo was successful. Tiffany & Co., thank you for your purchase. Order number 4459. A necklace. $800. I hadn't received a necklace. I scrolled back. The transfers started 8 months ago. Small amounts at first. Then bigger. Car payments. Rent assistance. Medical expenses. He wasn't just cheating. He was siphoning my life savings into my sister's pockets. I printed every single page. The hum of the printer sounded like a war drum. 2 days later, the doorbell rang. It was 7 p.m. on a Tuesday. Grant was reading in the living room, scrolling through his phone, and I was folding laundry. I'll get it. Grant jumped up a little too eagerly. I stayed back, watching from the hallway shadow. He opened the door, and there she was. Melanie. She looked staged. That was the only word for it. She wore an oversized beige sweater that hung off one shoulder, no makeup, which for Melanie took an hour to achieve, and her hair was in a messy bun. She looked like a tragic heroine in a Lifetime movie. Grant. She whimpered, her voice trembling. Melanie? What's wrong? Come in, come in. He ushered her inside, his hand lingering on the small of her back a fraction of a second too long. I walked into the living room, my face a mask of concern. Mel? What happened? Melanie looked at me, tears instantly welling up in her large, doe eyes. Valery. I didn't know where else to go. She collapsed onto the sofa. I sat next to her, avoiding touching her. My skin crawled at her proximity. I could smell it, the Santal 33. It was faint, mixed with her vanilla perfume, but it was there. She smelled like my husband. Just tell us, Grant said gently, sitting on the coffee table in front of her, leaning in. Whatever it is, we're family. I'm pregnant, she whispered, covering her face with her hands. Grant gasped. A perfect, theatrical gasp. Pregnant? Oh my God, Mel. I stared at her. How far along? 8 weeks, she sobbed. Who is the father? I asked. My voice was calm, clinical. The pharmacist asking about symptoms. Melanie shook her head violently. I can't say. It was a mistake. A one-night stand. He's a bad guy, Val. He blocked my number. He doesn't want anything to do with it. A bad guy, I repeated. I looked at Grant. Sounds terrible. He's a monster, Grant said, his jaw tightening in fake anger. To abandon a woman like this? Coward. I wanted to laugh. I wanted to laugh until I screamed. The audacity. The sheer, unadulterated gall of calling himself a coward while sitting right in front of me. So, what are you going to do? I asked. I don't know. Melanie wailed. I have no money. I can't work right now, I'm so nauseous. Mom and Dad said they can't help much. I'm so scared, Val. She reached out and grabbed my hand. Her palm was clammy. Please. I know I've been a mess in the past. But this is a baby. Your niece or nephew. I want to keep it. But I can't do it alone. Grant looked at me, his eyes pleading. Valerie, we can't turn her away. We have the guest room. We have the means. It's family. There it was. The trap. If I said no, I was the heartless sister turning away a pregnant woman in crisis. If I said yes, I was inviting the mistress and the illegitimate child into my home. But I remembered the lawyer I had called on my lunch break. Get hard evidence, she had said. DNA is gold. But residency establishes a pattern. If you want to destroy them, keep them close enough to hang themselves. Of course, I said, squeezing Melanie's hand until she flinched slightly. We'll help. Melanie's face lit up with relief. Really? You mean it? We'll do whatever is necessary, I said. But Melanie, a baby is expensive. We'll need to go over your finances. And we need to figure out child support. Even if this guy is a monster, he owes you money. We should hire a private investigator to find him. Melanie froze. Grant stiffened. No! Melanie shrieked a little too loud. No, I don't want him involved. He's dangerous. Please, Val. No police, no investigators. Just us. Okay, I said soothingly. Just us. But we're going to need a plan. You can't just rely on charity forever. I know, she sniffled. I'll be good. I promise. I know you will, I said. I stood up. I'll go make up the guest bed. I walked away, leaving them alone in the living room. I paused just around the corner. Is she buying it? Melanie whispered, her voice suddenly devoid of tears. Totally, Grant whispered back. She feels guilty. We're in. Good, she giggled. A low, malicious sound. I hate sleeping on that futon at Mom's. I walked up the stairs, my heart pounding a steady rhythm of rage. Enjoy the bed, Melanie, I thought. Because when I'm done with you, you won't even have a futon to sleep on. With Melanie ensconced in my guest room like a parasitic queen bee, treating my home as her personal hotel, demanding pickles at 2 a.m. and complaining that the Wi-Fi was slow in her wing of the house, I focused on the silent war, the money. Grant thought I was handling finances in the usual way, paying bills, balancing the checkbook. He didn't know I was conducting a forensic audit of our entire marriage. I took a day off work, telling Grant I had a continuing education seminar. Instead, I drove to the bank. Not our usual branch, but the headquarters downtown where I wouldn't run into anyone we knew. I sat in a glass-walled office with a banker named Mr. Henderson. I had brought the binder. I need to separate my assets, I told him bluntly. I need to know exactly where every penny has gone in the last 2 years, and I need to secure what is legally mine. Mr. Henderson looked at the binder, then at me. He saw the resolve in my eyes. He didn't ask questions about my marriage. He just started typing. Okay, Mrs. Sterling. Let's look. It was worse than I thought. The business investment Grant had convinced me to sign off on last year? A $20,000 withdrawal. I thought it was for architectural software and licensing. The recipient account, Mr. Henderson frowned, adjusting his glasses. It's not a business vendor. It looks like a personal account under the name Melanie Thompson. I closed my eyes. He had given her 20 grand. Just handed it to her. And the car, Mr. Henderson continued. The Audi. It was refinanced 3 months ago. Cash out option. $15,000. Where did that go? I asked, though I knew the answer. Transferred to an account at a different bank. We can't see the owner, but the transfer memo says medical. Prenatal care. He was paying for premium doctors while lying to me that she was going to a free clinic. What about the inheritance? I asked, my voice trembling for the first time. My grandmother's estate. That's in a trust, Mr. Henderson said. You're the sole trustee. But... He clicked a few times. There's a note here. An inquiry was made last week about dissolving the trust and transferring the deed of the lake house into a joint marital asset. Who made the inquiry? A Mr. Grant Sterling. He claimed to have power of attorney. My blood ran cold. He was trying to steal the lake house. My sanctuary. The place my grandmother built, the place I planned to retire. He wanted to put his name on it so that when he divorced me, he could force a sale and take half. Or worse, move Melanie in. He does not have power of attorney, I said, my voice like ice. Freeze it. Freeze everything that requires his signature. And I want to open a new account. Sole ownership. Move everything that is liquid and legally mine into it immediately. Mrs. Sterling, if you move joint funds, it could be looked at unfavorably in a divorce court, Mr. Henderson warned gently. I'm not moving joint funds, I said, pulling out a folder of documents. I'm moving my paycheck, which is direct deposited. And I'm moving the inheritance dividends, which are separate property. And I'm closing the overdraft protection on the joint account. If he spends money he doesn't have, I want the card to decline. Mr. Henderson smiled. A small, conspiratorial smile. Understood. Let's get started. I spent 3 hours at the bank. When I walked out, I felt lighter. I had cut off the supply line. But I needed more. I needed to know exactly what they were planning for the future. That night, Grant was in the shower. His phone was on the nightstand. He had changed the passcode recently, claiming security updates. But Grant was lazy. I picked up the phone. I tried 12:34. No. I tried his birthday. No. I tried our anniversary. No. Then I paused. I looked toward the guest room where Melanie was sleeping. I typed in Melanie's birthday. Click. The phone unlocked. The nausea hit me again, but I swallowed it. I went straight to his texts. Grant, just hold on, babe. The bank is being slow with the lake house deed. Once I get her to sign the transfer, we list it. That's $500,000 easy. Melanie, hurry up. I can't stand living with her. She's so boring. And she smells like antiseptic. Grant, I know. She's a drag. But she's a cash cow. Let me milk her a little longer. Cash cow. Boring. Antiseptic. I took photos of the screen with my own phone. My hands were steady now. The hurt was gone, replaced by a cold, calculating fury. Milk me? I whispered to the glowing screen. Honey, the udders just went dry. I put the phone back exactly how I found it. When Grant came out of the shower, toweling off his hair, smiling that boyish smile, I smiled back. Did you have a good shower? I asked. Great, he said. Hey, did the direct deposit hit? My card got declined at the gas station today. Weird, right? So weird, I said, fluffing my pillow. Probably just a bank glitch. I'll call them tomorrow. I rolled over and turned off the light. Good night, Grant. Night, Val. He didn't know it, but he was already sleeping next to the enemy. The text messages were damning, but in the state where we lived, infidelity didn't necessarily guarantee I'd keep all my assets unless I could prove dissipation of marital assets on the affair. I needed proof that he was spending our future on her. And I needed proof of paternity that would hold up in court. I met Mark, the private investigator Sarah recommended, at a diner 2 towns over. Mark was a nondescript man in his 50s, wearing a beige jacket that allowed him to blend into any background. "So," Mark said, sliding a thick manila envelope across the Formica table. "You were right. They aren't very careful." I opened the envelope. Even though I had seen the texts, the photos hit me like a physical blow. Photo 1, Grant and Melanie at a high-end baby boutique. Grant is holding up a tiny pair of blue booties. He's laughing. Photo 2, them eating lunch at an outdoor cafe. Grant is feeding her a bite of his cheesecake. It's intimate. It's the behavior of lovers, not in-laws. Photo 3, this one was the killer. They were in a park. Melanie was sitting on a bench, her shirt pulled up slightly to expose her bump. Grant was kneeling in the grass, kissing her stomach. His hands were cradling her hips. I stared at the image. That was my husband. The man who claimed he was too tired to be affectionate with me. The man who said he wasn't ready for kids yet whenever I brought it up. He wasn't ready for kids with me. "There's more," Mark said, taking a sip of his black coffee. "I followed them to the OBGYN appointment last Tuesday." "You were at work?" "Yes," I rasped. Grant said he had a client meeting. He went into the exam room with her. I couldn't go in, obviously, but I got the audio from the waiting room when they came out. He slid a small USB drive across the table. "You can listen later." But the nurse called him Dad. He didn't correct her. "Did you get anything on the finances?" I asked, putting the photos back. I couldn't look at them anymore. "Yeah. He's paying cash for a lot of things." But I got a shot of him withdrawing from an ATM near her apartment complex before she moved in with you. And here. Mark pulled out a document. "This is a lease application for a luxury apartment downtown. 2 bedrooms. Starting next month." "Next month?" I frowned. "The lease is in his name. Listed occupant, Melanie Thompson. He was planning to move her out of my house and into a luxury pad on my dime, probably once he secured the lake house money." "Thank you, Mark," I said, reaching for my checkbook. "This is exactly what I needed." "One more thing," Mark hesitated. "This isn't in the report, but I saw them arguing once. Outside the clinic." "About what?" "You." Melanie was yelling. I caught bits of it. She screamed, "Why haven't you left her yet?" And he said, "I need the signature on the deed, Mel. Be patient." I froze. The deed. The lake house again. It was the linchpin of their plan. They needed me to sign over the property rights so they could cash out. "He's going to pressure you soon," Mark warned. "If he's leasing an apartment, he needs the cash flow." "I know," I said. "Let him try." I drove home with the envelope on the passenger seat. It felt radioactive. When I got home, Melanie was on the couch, watching TV. She had a bowl of ice cream resting on her bump. "Hey Val," she said without looking up. "We're out of Rocky Road. You should pick some up." "Maybe later," I said, hanging up my coat. "Where's Grant?" "Oh, he went to the gym." "The gym." "Right. Probably finalizing the lease on the apartment." "Melanie," I said, walking into the living room. "I was thinking. Since the baby is coming, we should probably have a baby shower. You know, get you everything you need." Her eyes lit up. "Really? You'd do that for me?" Of course, I smiled. I want everything to be perfect. In fact, I think we should do a gender reveal party. A big one. Invite Mom, Dad, Mrs. Park, everyone. That sounds amazing, she squealed. Can we do it at that nice Italian place downtown? The one with the private room? The expensive one? I asked. Yeah. Grant loves their ravioli. Sure, I said. Let's do it there. Next Saturday. I'll handle everything. You're the best sister ever, she said. I really am, I replied. A gender reveal party. It was the perfect setting. A room full of family. A captive audience. Grant wanted a signature? I'd give him something much more permanent. I went upstairs to my office and pulled out the USB drive Mark gave me. I needed to edit a video. I wasn't an architect, but I was about to design the most spectacular demolition in family history. The next day, my parents came over. I hadn't invited them. They just showed up, letting themselves in with the spare key I realized I needed to take back. They found Melanie in the kitchen, eating a sandwich I had made. They fawned over her, touching her stomach, asking how she felt. They barely nodded at me. Valerie, my mother said, sitting down at the island. We need to talk. About what? I asked, pouring them coffee. About the living arrangements, my father said. Melanie tells us the guest room is a bit drafty. And the mattress is hard. I stared at him. It was a memory foam mattress I bought last year for $2,000. She's pregnant, Val, my mother chimed in. She needs comfort. We were thinking, maybe you and Grant could switch rooms with her. The master suite has the soaking tub. It would be so good for her back. I put the coffee pot down hard. You want me to give up my bedroom? For her? It's just temporary, Mom waved her hand dismissively. Until the baby comes. Grant said he wouldn't mind sleeping in the guest room for a while if it helps Melanie. Of course Grant wouldn't mind. He'd be sneaking into the master suite every night anyway. No, I said firmly. Excuse me? My father frowned. Valerie, don't be selfish. Your sister is in a delicate condition. You have so much. This house, your career, can't you sacrifice a little comfort for family? I am housing her, I said, my voice rising. I am feeding her. I am paying for her prenatal vitamins. I am not giving her my bed. You've always been like this, my mother sighed, shaking her head. So possessive. Just like with Kyle. The air left the room. They brought up Kyle. The boyfriend Melanie stole. And they were using him to guilt me. Melanie made a mistake with Kyle, my father said. But she was young. Now she's a mother. She needs support, not judgment. You're the older sister. It's your duty to take care of her. My duty? I laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. Is it my duty to give her everything I have? My house? My money? My husband? I almost said it. We expected better of you, Mom said coldly. We thought you'd be happy to be an aunt. Since, well, you haven't been able to give us grandchildren yourself. The cruelty of it took my breath away. We hadn't had kids because Grant was on birth control, claiming we couldn't afford it yet. My parents thought I was barren, or selfish. We're just asking for the room, Valerie, Melanie said from the table, her mouth full of sandwich. Grant said yes. I looked at the three of them. My parents, looking at me with disappointment. My sister, looking at me with entitlement. They were a unit. A three-headed monster that had fed on my compliance for 30 years. If I kicked them out now, if I exploded, Grant would know I was onto him. He would hide the assets. He would run. I needed them to think I was still the doormat. I needed them to feel safe. Fine, I said, forcing my face to relax. I won't give up the master. But I'll buy a new mattress topper for the guest room. The most expensive one. And I'll hire a cleaner to come twice a week so Melanie doesn't have to lift a finger. My mother smiled, patting my hand. See? I knew you were a good girl deep down. And, I added, I'm throwing her a huge gender reveal party next week. At Lasorio. I'm inviting everyone. Oh, Val. Melanie clapped. That's perfect. I want everything to be perfect for you, I said, looking directly at my sister. I want everyone to know exactly how this baby came to be. You're amazing, my father said, finally taking a sip of coffee. Grant is a lucky man. Yes, I said, turning back to the sink so they wouldn't see the wolfish grin spreading across my face. He certainly is. They stayed for another hour, planning the party list. They talked about names. They talked about how the baby would have Melanie's eyes and, well, hopefully not the father's nose, Melanie joked. I listened. I nodded. And inside, I was counting down the hours. 7 days. 7 days until the party. 7 days until I burned this entire toxic family tree to the ground. Living with the enemy is a specific kind of psychological torture. It wasn't just the big betrayals, it was the microaggressions, the tiny, everyday cruelties that chipped away at my sanity. Melanie moved in on a Thursday. She brought 4 suitcases, her emotional support body pillow, and an attitude that suggested she was the queen returning to her castle, and I was the scullery maid. The dynamic in the house shifted instantly. Grant and Melanie had a rhythm. They moved around each other with a familiarity that made my stomach turn. They laughed at inside jokes. They shared looks across the kitchen island. I installed the cameras on Friday morning. I lived in a one-party consent state, and since it was my home, I had every legal right to secure it. I hid a nanny cam in the bookshelf in the living room and another one in the kitchen, disguised as a USB charger. I didn't put one in the guest room or the bathroom, I wasn't a pervert, and I didn't need to see that. I just needed to catch them in the common areas. I needed proof that their relationship wasn't just supportive in-laws. The first weekend was a nightmare. Valerie, Melanie whined from the couch on Saturday afternoon. This lemonade is too sour. Can you add more sugar? I looked at her. She was watching The Real Housewives, feet propped up on my coffee table, no coaster under her glass. Grant was sitting in the armchair, watching her with a look of sickening adoration. Get it yourself, Mel, I said, not looking up from my laptop. You're pregnant, not paralyzed. Grant shot me a glare. Babe, be nice. She's carrying extra weight. It's hard on her ankles. It's fine, Grant, Melanie sighed, playing the martyr. Valerie is just stressed about work. She's always so intense. I grit my teeth and typed louder. But the real horror show happened when they thought I was asleep. On Tuesday night, I went up to bed early, claiming a migraine. I turned off the lights, locked my door, and opened the app on my phone connected to the living room camera. The feed was clear. Black and white night vision, but clear enough. Grant was pacing the living room. Melanie was eating ice cream straight from the carton, my Ben and Jerry's. I can't take it anymore, Melanie whispered. The audio was crisp. She walks around here like she owns the place. When are you going to get the deed signed? Soon, Grant replied, walking over to her. He sat down and put a hand on her knee. I printed the papers today. I'm going to tell her it's for tax purposes. A limited liability transfer for the business. She doesn't read the fine print. She better not, Melanie said. She spooned some ice cream and held it up to Grant's mouth. He ate it. My husband, eating ice cream from my sister's spoon in my living room. I want that lake house, Grant. I want to spend the summer there with the baby. Just us. No, Valerie. Just us, Grant promised. He leaned in and kissed her. It wasn't a peck. It was deep. Passionate. Disgusting. I watched on my phone screen, lying in the dark, tears streaming sideways into my ears. I wanted to run downstairs with a baseball bat. I wanted to scream. But then Grant pulled away and said something that froze my blood. Don't worry. Once the house is transferred and the divorce is filed, she'll be destitute. I've already moved the 401k funds into the offshore holding. She won't find them. My 401k. My retirement. The money I had been contributing to for 15 years. I sat up in bed, the tears instantly drying up. He wasn't just going to leave me. He was going to bankrupt me. He was committing financial fraud. I hit record and saved the clip to the cloud. Then I saved it to my external hard drive. Then I emailed it to a secret account. I didn't sleep that night. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, formulating the kill shot. The next morning, I walked into the kitchen. Melanie was making toast. Good morning, Val, she chirped, apparently in a good mood after her late-night tryst. Morning, I said, pouring coffee. Hey, Grant mentioned some paperwork for the business? Something about taxes? Melanie froze mid-chew. She looked at the hallway where Grant was coming down the stairs. Oh, yeah, Grant said, smoothing his hair. Just some boring admin stuff. I need to transfer the lake house title into an LLC to protect us from liability. You know, in case a client sues me. That makes sense, I said, sipping my coffee. You're so smart about these things, honey. Just put it on my desk. I'll sign it this weekend. Grant's eyes lit up. He looked at Melanie. They exchanged a look of pure triumph. Great, he said. I'll have it ready. Go ahead, Grant, I thought. Prepare your little trap. Because I'm bringing a bulldozer. The lake house wasn't just a piece of property. It was my heart. My grandmother bought that land in the 70s, built a cabin on it with her own hands and the help of my grandfather. It was where I learned to swim, where I had my first kiss, where I went when the world felt too heavy. Legally, it was separate property. Inheritance is not marital property in our state, as long as you don't commingle it. I had been meticulous about keeping the deed in my name and paying taxes from my personal account. Grant knew this. That's why he needed the transfer. If I signed it over to an LLC that we co-owned, it became marital property. Boom. Half of it was his. Friday night, he brought the papers into the kitchen. He poured me a glass of wine, the cheap stuff, I noticed. He was saving the good wine for Melanie. Here it is, babe, he said, sliding a thick stack of documents across the granite island. Just standard stuff. Formation of the Sterling Family LLC. Transfer of assets for liability protection. I put on my reading glasses. I flipped through the pages. It was exactly what I expected. A quitclaim deed buried in the middle of a bunch of nonsense corporate bylaws. Grant, I said, looking up. This says I'm transferring the title to the LLC for $1. Right, he nodded eagerly. Just a formality. You still own the LLC. We both do. I see. I took a sip of wine. You know, my lawyer friend Diana mentioned something about this. She said if we do this, we need a separate operating agreement to define the shares. Grant's smile faltered. Diana? Why were you talking to Diana? Oh, we just grabbed lunch. I mentioned your brilliant idea to protect our assets. She agreed it was smart, but she sent me a template for an operating agreement. Just to make it audit-proof for the IRS. I pulled a folder from my bag. Inside was a document I had drafted with Diana earlier that day. It's just a standard operating agreement, I lied. It says that in the event of the LLC dissolving, the initial contributors get their assets back first. So, since I'm contributing the house, I get the house back. It protects us from, I don't know, creditors coming after your personal income? I threw in some buzzwords I knew he barely understood. Grant was a terrible businessman. He nodded, trying to look knowledgeable. Right. Audit proof. That sounds good. So, I smiled sweetly. I'll sign your deed transfer if you sign this operating agreement. And this promissory note. Promissory note? Yeah. Since you're using my house to bolster your business credit, Diana said the business technically owes me for the valuation. It's just paper money, Grant. It doesn't mean anything unless we sell. I slid the second document across. It was a promissory note acknowledging that Grant Sterling owed Valery Sterling $450,000, half the house value plus the cash he stole, payable upon demand or dissolution of marriage. He didn't read it. He was too focused on the deed. He saw the prize, the house, and ignored the hook. Sure, he grabbed a pen. Let's get this done. He signed the operating agreement. He signed the promissory note. He notarized his own signature with his stamp, which was technically illegal since he was a party to the document, but it proved he signed it. Then, I signed his deed transfer. Done. He beamed, snatching the deed. I'll file this Monday. Perfect, I said. He didn't know that the operating agreement he just signed superseded the deed transfer in our state's specific property laws regarding LLCs. And the promissory note? That was an admission of debt. If he filed the deed, he was triggering the debt. He was legally handing me a confession of judgment. He walked out of the kitchen, whistling. He went straight to the living room where Melanie was waiting. Did she sign? I heard Melanie whisper. Hook, line, and sinker, Grant bragged. We got the house, baby. I swirled the cheap wine in my glass. No, Grant, I whispered to the empty kitchen. You just signed a confession that you owe me $500,000. And you just gave me the leverage to garnish your wages for the rest of your miserable life. I took the signed documents and walked upstairs to my safe. I locked them inside. One step closer. Now, I just needed the biological proof. The financial trap was set, but the emotional nail in the coffin required science. I needed DNA. Collecting a sample from Grant was easy. I lived with him. His razor, his hairbrush, his used coffee cups were everywhere. But for a legal paternity test that would hold up in the court of public opinion and convince my parents, I needed a chain of custody. I couldn't just swab his cheek while he slept. But getting Melanie's DNA? That was trickier. I couldn't exactly ask her for spit. However, fate, or perhaps Melanie's own laziness, intervened. On Sunday morning, Melanie complained of bleeding gums. Pregnancy gingivitis, she moaned. My gums are so sensitive. She left her bloody dental floss on the bathroom counter in the guest bath. It was gross. It was vile. But it was gold. I waited until she went downstairs for breakfast. I slipped into the guest bathroom with a pair of sterile tweezers and a Ziploc bag I had brought from the pharmacy. I picked up the used floss, careful not to contaminate it with my own DNA. I sealed it in the bag, labeled it Subject B, and hid it in my pocket. Now for Grant. I needed something fresh. Honey, I called out. I'm making smoothies. Do you want one? Yeah, strawberry, he yelled from the couch. I made the smoothie. I poured it into a glass. I handed it to him. He drank it all. He set the glass down on the coaster. Thanks, babe. No problem. I waited 5 minutes. Then I walked over. I'll take that. I picked up the glass by the very bottom rim, avoiding his saliva prints on the top. I walked into the kitchen. Instead of washing it, I wrapped the top of the glass in saran wrap, then placed the whole glass inside a large Tupperware container. What are you doing? Melanie asked, walking into the kitchen. My heart stopped. Oh, I turned, shielding the container with my body. Just saving the dregs. I want to see if this new protein powder separates after an hour. Pharmacy experiment. It was a weak lie. But Melanie wasn't a scientist. She shrugged. Nerd. Yeah, I smiled. Nerd. I took the experiment straight to my car. I drove to the private lab Mark had set up for me. It cost me $800 for a rush job, informational paternity test. It wouldn't be admissible in a criminal court without a court order, but it was enough for what I needed. It was enough to slap on a projector screen. How fast can you get this done? I asked the technician. 24 to 48 hours, he said. I need it by Friday, I said. The party is Saturday. You'll have it. Driving home, I felt a strange vibration in my pocket. My phone. It was a notification from my bank app. Overdraft alert. I pulled over. I opened the app. Grant had tried to buy a diamond bracelet online. $3,000. The card declined because I had removed the overdraft protection. I laughed. I laughed until tears ran down my face. He was trying to buy her jewelry for the gender reveal party using my money. And he hit a wall. I composed a text to Grant. Hey honey, the bank just alerted me to some fraudulent activity. Someone tried to charge $3,000 for jewelry? I'm going to call the fraud department and have them investigate the IP address. I hit send. 3 seconds later, my phone rang. It was Grant. Val. Don't call the bank. He sounded panicked. Why not? Someone is stealing from us. No, it was me. I was trying to buy you a surprise. For being so supportive of Melanie. A $3,000 surprise? I feigned shock. Oh, honey, that's too much. We can't afford that right now. Thank goodness the bank stopped it. Let's save that money for the baby, okay? Right, he choked out. For the baby. See you at home. I hung up. He wasn't buying me a surprise. He was buying Melanie a push present 5 months early. Nice try, Grant, I thought, merging back into traffic. But the ATM is closed. Monday lunch. I met Diana properly this time. Not for a fake template, but for the kill strategy. Diana was 60, wore Chanel suits, and had a reputation for leaving ex-husbands weeping in the hallways of the courthouse. She was exactly who I needed. Okay, Valerie, Diana said, reviewing the file Mark and I had compiled. This is impressive. You have the financial forensic trail. You have the texts. You have the audio of them plotting to defraud you. And you'll have the DNA. Is it enough? I asked. I don't just want a divorce. I want my dignity back. And I want them to hurt. Diana took off her glasses. In a no-fault divorce state, infidelity usually doesn't impact the division of assets much. However, she tapped the promissory note I had tricked Grant into signing. This changes things. This is a business debt. We can enforce this. She leaned in. Here is the strategy. We file for divorce on the grounds of cruel and inhuman treatment. It's harder to prove, but with the pregnancy of your sister, we have a case. It allows us to freeze assets immediately. But the real leverage is the fraud. The fraud? The money he moved to offshore accounts? The car refinance? That is dissipation of marital assets. We can sue him for that. We can sue Melanie for alienation of affection if we file in North Carolina or one of the few states that allow it, but here, we sue her for civil conspiracy to defraud. Civil conspiracy, I tasted the words. I like it. We serve him the papers immediately after your party, Diana said. But we need the house secured first. Did he file the deed? He said he did this morning. Good. Then the debt is active. I will have the lien ready to place on the house the second the divorce is filed. He won't be able to sell it. He won't be able to borrow against it. He will own a shell company that owes you $500,000. What about the gender reveal? I asked. Is it too much? Diana smiled, a sharp, predatory grin. Valery, the court of law is my domain. The court of public opinion is yours. Destroying his reputation? That's not just revenge. That's leverage. If he loses his social standing, he loses clients. If he loses clients, he has no income. If he has no income, he can't fight you in court. It's tactical. Tactical, I nodded. I can do tactical. One more thing, Diana said. We need a witness at the party. Someone neutral. I invited Mrs. Gable, I said. Our neighbor. She's the biggest gossip in town. And I invited my college roommate, Jen. She hates Melanie. Perfect. Make sure they have a good view. I left Diana's office feeling like a general who had just finalized the battle plans. On the way back to work, I stopped at a party supply store. I needed to pick up the gender reveal supplies. Melanie wanted a cake. She wanted to cut into a cake and see pink or blue. I ordered a custom cake. The baker looked at me strangely when I gave her the instructions for the filling, but she took the cash. Are you sure? She asked. Positive, I said. It's a very specific theme. I also bought balloons. Black ones. And I stopped at an electronics store to buy a high-definition projector. When I got home, Melanie was looking at stroller reviews on her iPad. Did you get the cake? She asked excitedly. Ordered it, I said. It's going to be a surprise. I hope it's pink, she giggled. I feel like it's a girl. A mini-me. A mini Melanie. The thought made me shudder. One Melanie was enough to ruin a life. Two would be an apocalypse. We'll see, I said. Saturday is going to be full of surprises. Friday morning. I was at the pharmacy, counting out lisinopril for Mrs. Higgins, when my email pinged. Subject, lab results, case number 89901. My hands shook. I put the pill bottle down. I walked to the break room and locked the door. I opened the attachment. Probability of paternity, 99.9998%. Alleged father, Grant Sterling. Child, fetus of Melanie Thompson. I stared at the numbers. Seeing it in black and white was different than knowing it in my gut. It was final. It was scientific proof that my husband had been intimate with my sister, repeatedly, likely without protection, while sleeping in my bed. I didn't cry. I think I had run out of tears. Instead, I felt a cold, hard clarity. I forwarded the PDF to Diana. I forwarded it to my secret email. I printed 3 copies. Then, I did something I hadn't planned. I logged into the airline website and booked a one-way ticket to Seoul, South Korea, leaving Sunday night. 24 hours after the party. I booked a hotel in Gangnam. I booked a tour of the palaces. I was leaving. I was done. When I got home that evening, the house was quiet. Too quiet. I walked into the kitchen and found Grant and Melanie sitting at the table, heads bent together over a laptop. They jumped apart when they saw me. "Hey!" Grant said, his voice too high. "Just showing Mel some nursery designs." "Architectural designs?" I asked. "Yeah." I walked over and glanced at the screen. It wasn't a nursery design. It was a Zillow listing for a condo. A condo that cost $600,000. "Nice place," I said. "Planning to buy it for a client?" "Something like that," Grant muttered, closing the laptop. "Well, make sure the client has the funds," I said, opening the fridge. Markets are volatile. The tension in the room was thick enough to choke on. I could feel their excitement, their anticipation. They thought they were days away from freedom. They thought that after the party, after I signed over the assets, which they thought was done, they would break the news to me gently, or maybe just leave a note. They had no idea that I was the one holding the detonator. "Are you excited for tomorrow?" Melanie asked. "Mom said she bought a new dress." "I am," I said, turning to face them. "It's going to be a turning point for our family. I can feel it." "Me too," Melanie smiled, rubbing her belly. "A fresh start." "Grant," I said. "Make sure you wear that blue suit. The one you wore to our rehearsal dinner." "Why that one?" he asked. "Because you look handsome in it. And I want the photos to be timeless. Because it's the suit you'll be wearing when your life ends," I thought. I went upstairs to pack. Not for the trip, but to move my valuables out. I took my jewelry, my passport, my hard drives. I put them in a go bag and hid it in the trunk of my car. I stood in the center of my bedroom. The room where I had laughed, cried, and loved this man for 7 years. I looked at the wedding photo on the dresser. I picked it up. I looked at the young, hopeful woman in the white dress. "I'm sorry," I whispered to her. "I'm sorry I let you get hurt." I smashed the frame against the corner of the dresser. Glass shattered. Grant ran up the stairs. "Val? What happened?" I kicked a piece of glass under the rug. "Nothing," I called out. "Just dropped a glass of water." "Don't come in, you'll cut your feet." "Okay." He hesitated, then walked away. I looked at the shattered photo. The crack ran right through Grant's face. "Perfect," I whispered. Saturday evening. Lasorio was dimly lit, smelling of garlic and expensive wine. I had rented the private back room. It had a long mahogany table and a large white wall perfect for projection. The guests arrived. My parents, looking proud and oblivious. Mrs. Park, wearing a scowl and a Chanel suit. Mrs. Gable, eyes darting around looking for gossip. Jen, my college roommate, who gave me a squeeze that nearly broke my ribs. "You got this," Jen whispered. She knew everything. She was my ground support. Melanie made an entrance. She wore a tight pink dress that accentuated the bump. Grant trailed behind her, looking nervous but smug in the blue suit. "Welcome everyone," I announced, clapping my hands. "Thank you for coming to celebrate Melanie and the new addition to our family." And to celebrate family unity, my father toasted, raising a glass. "To sisters helping sisters." I smiled. Yes. Sisters. We sat down. Waiters brought out calamari and bruschetta. Mrs. Park spoke to Grant in Korean. "She looks terrible in that dress." "So cheap." Grant replied in Korean. "Shoo, Mom. Be nice." We need her in a good mood for the announcement later. I was sitting right across from them. I sipped my water, my face a mask of polite interest. "So, Melanie," Mrs. Gable asked loudly. "Where is the father? Is he not coming?" The table went silent. Melanie looked down at her plate. "No. He's out of the picture. He wasn't ready to be a dad. Men," my mother sighed. "Useless." "Well, you have us. You have Grant and Valerie." "Grant has been so helpful," Melanie said, casting a shy look at him. "I don't know what I'd do without him." "He's a good man," Mrs. Park said in English, looking at me pointedly. "You are lucky, Valerie. Most men would not want their wife's pregnant sister living in their house." "Oh, I know," I said. "Grant is 1 in a million. He's very involved." Dinner was served. I barely touched my risotto. My heart was hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs. Thump. 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 This was it. The climax of 5 months of hell. And now, I stood up, tapping my spoon against my glass. "Before we cut the cake, I have a little presentation. A tribute to the journey that brought us here." "A video?" Melanie clapped. "Ah, Val. Did you put together baby photos?" "Something like that," I said. I signaled the waiter to dim the lights. I connected my laptop to the projector. The white wall lit up. "I want everyone to pay close attention," I said, my voice steady, projecting to the back of the room. "Because details matter. In architecture, in pharmacy, and in family." Grant looked at me, a flicker of confusion crossing his face. He sensed a shift in my tone. "Valerie?" he asked. "Sit down, Grant," I commanded. The first image appeared on the screen. It wasn't a baby photo. It was the bank statement. Blown up huge. The transfers highlighted in neon yellow. Venmo, Melanie Thompson, $500. Venmo, Melanie Thompson, $1,000. Car payment, Audi, $15,000. A gasp went around the room. "What is this?" My father stood up. "Valerie, why are you showing bank statements?" "Sit down, Dad," I said. "Keep watching." The next slide. The text messages. "Grant, I can't wait to be rid of her." "Melanie, hurry up and get the deed signed." "Grant, she's a cash cow. Let me milk her." The silence in the room was absolute. It was a vacuum. Melanie's face went white. Grant started to stand up. "Valerie, turn it off. It's a joke. It's out of context. Sit down." I didn't shout. I hissed it, low and dangerous. Then, the audio played. The recording from the living room. "Once the house is transferred and the divorce is filed, she'll be destitute. I've already moved the 401k funds." Mrs. Park looked confused. She didn't understand the English audio well. She looked at Grant. Then came the video. The one Mark took in the park. Grant kissing Melanie's belly. The intimacy was undeniable. It wasn't brotherly. It was possessive. My mother put her hand over her mouth. Oh my God. And finally, the slide I had saved for last. The DNA test. Probability of paternity, 99.99%. Father, Grant Sterling. I paused the video on that slide. The numbers glowed in the dark room like a neon judgment. Grant slumped in his chair. Melanie started to sob, a high-pitched, keen sound. I looked at Mrs. Park. She was staring at the screen, understanding the numbers if not the words. I took a deep breath. It was time for the final blow. The room was frozen in a tableau of horror. My father was gripping the table edge so hard his knuckles were white. My mother was weeping, looking between Melanie and Grant like she didn't know who to protect first. Mrs. Gable was furiously typing on her phone under the table. Grant looked at me. His eyes were dead. "Valerie, please." I walked over to Mrs. Park. I stood directly in front of her. She looked up at me with fear. She had never seen this Valerie before. I took a breath and let the Korean flow out of me. It wasn't the broken, hesitant Korean of a beginner. It was the sharp, fluent Korean of a woman who had studied for 3 years in the dark. "Mother," I said in Korean. "You always said I was stupid. You said I had cow eyes. You said I was an ignorant American who couldn't satisfy your son." Her jaw dropped. Her eyes went wide. She gasped, clutching her chest. "You knew," she whispered in Korean. "You understood?" "Every word," I replied. "I heard you tell him to steal my inheritance. I heard you tell him to leave me penniless. I heard you call my sister a whore but say her baby was welcome because it was a boy." I turned to the room, switching to English so my parents could hear. "You want a gender reveal?" I asked. "Fine." I walked over to the cake. The beautiful, white frosted cake sitting in the center of the table. I picked up the knife. "Melanie wanted pink or blue," I said, looking at my sobbing sister. "But I think red is more appropriate. The color of betrayal." I plunged the knife into the cake and sliced it open. It bled. I had instructed the baker to fill it with strawberry coulis, thick and red. It oozed out onto the white platter like a crime scene. "It's a boy," I said flatly. "Grant's son." "My nephew." "My stepson?" "No, I suppose just the evidence of your affair." Melanie screamed. "You're crazy. You're a psycho." "Am I?" I laughed. It was a terrifying sound, even to my own ears. I'm not the one sleeping with my brother-in-law. I'm not the one stealing from my wife. I reached into my bag and pulled out the manila envelope Diana had prepared. I threw it onto Grant's lap. "Divorce papers," I said. "And a lawsuit for dissipation of marital assets. And..." I pulled out another paper. "The lien on the lake house. Remember those papers you signed, Grant? The promissory note? You admitted to owing me $450,000. I filed it this morning. The lake house is frozen. You can't sell it. You can't leverage it. You own nothing." Grant looked at the papers, his hands shaking so hard he dropped them. "Val, you can't. The operating agreement supersedes the deed," I finished for him. "I read the fine print, Grant. You didn't." I turned to my parents. "And you," I pointed a shaking finger at them. "You wanted me to give up my bedroom? You wanted me to support them? You knew she was trouble, and you fed her to me. You enabled this." "Valerie, we didn't know it was Grant," my mother wailed. "We thought." "It doesn't matter what you thought," I yelled. "You chose her. Again and again. Well, congratulations. You have her. She's all yours. The baby, the drama, the expenses. Because I am done." I looked at Grant one last time. "I loved you," I said, my voice cracking for the first time. "I learned a language for you. I built a life for you. But you were never building a life with me. You were just digging a hole. And now? You can lie in it." The silence stretched, heavy and suffocating. Grant looked up, tears streaming down his face. "Valerie, I'm sorry. I made a mistake. Please. A mistake is forgetting to take out the trash, I said. Sleeping with my sister for 8 months is a choice. I grabbed my purse. I looked around the room, at the ruined cake, the weeping family, the stunned guests. The devastation was total. I had burned it all down. If you're still listening, if you're feeling that fire in your chest right now, do me a favor. Like this video and comment the number 1 below. Let me know you're with me. Let me know you stand with the women who don't just survive betrayal, they nuke it. Seeing your support tells me I wasn't crazy, that I did the right thing. Comment 1 right now, and let me tell you what happened when the dust settled. Because the best part wasn't the explosion. It was walking away from the fire. The restaurant manager, a terrified-looking man named Marco, appeared at the door. Is everything okay? Other guests are complaining about the screaming. We're leaving, I said calmly. The check is on the gentleman in the blue suit. He might need a payment plan. I walked out. I didn't run. I walked. Behind me, I heard the chaos erupt. Melanie was screaming at Grant. Mrs. Park was yelling in Korean. My father was trying to shout everyone down. It sounded like a riot. I walked to the parking lot, got into my car, and locked the doors. I sat there for a moment, gripping the steering wheel. I thought I would cry. I thought I would fall apart. But I didn't. I felt clean. Like I had just cut out a tumor. I drove home. I had about an hour before they came back. I had already packed my valuables, but I had one last thing to do. I went to the guest room. Melanie's room. I took trash bags. I swept everything, her clothes, her makeup, her stupid body pillow, into the bags. I didn't fold anything. I dragged the bags to the front porch and threw them down the stairs. Then I went to the master bedroom. I took Grant's clothes. His suits. His shoes. His precious gaming console. Bagged. Thrown. I changed the locks on the front door. I had called a 24-hour locksmith earlier that day and paid him double to meet me there at 9 p.m. He was waiting in his van when I pulled up. Rough night, he asked as he drilled out the deadbolt. You have no idea, I said. By the time Grant's car pulled into the driveway, the locks were changed, and his life was in a pile on the lawn. Grant, Melanie, and my parents spilled out of the car. My parents had driven them because Grant was apparently too shaken to drive. Valery! Grant banged on the door. Let us in. This is illegal. This is my house too. I opened the door, but kept the security chain on. Actually, I said through the crack. I have a temporary restraining order. I slid the paper through the crack. Diana had filed it Friday afternoon, citing emotional distress and domestic volatility. It was a stretch, but a judge granted it based on the surveillance footage of Grant's anger issues. I had edited a compilation of him throwing things when he lost video games. It gave me 48 hours of exclusive possession of the home. You have 48 hours to find a place, I said. After that, we can discuss you picking up the rest of your junk with a police escort. Where are we supposed to go? Melanie screamed from the lawn, clutching a trash bag. I'm pregnant. You can't leave me on the street. Go to Mom and Dad's, I said. They have a lovely guest room. Oh wait, the mattress is too hard, isn't it? Valery, please, my mother cried, standing by the car. Be reasonable. Let's talk about this. We're done talking, Mom. Take your daughter and your son-in-law. They're your problem now. I slammed the door. I locked the new deadbolt. I watched on the camera monitor as they screamed, cried, and eventually loaded the trash bags into my father's sedan. It was a clown car of misery. When their taillights disappeared, I poured myself a glass of the good wine, the bottle Grant had been saving. I drank it in the quiet, empty house. It tasted like victory. Sunday morning, I flew to Seoul. I turned off my phone. For 2 weeks, I ate kimchi, walked around Gyeongbokgung Palace, and didn't speak to a single soul from my old life. When I returned, refreshed and ready for war, Diana had news. "It's a bloodbath," she told me in her office. Grant tried to contest a lien on the house. The judge laughed at him. "The promissory note is ironclad. He owes you $450,000 immediately, which he doesn't have. So, what happens? We force a sale of his assets. Or, he signs over his share of the house to settle the debt. A clean break." "He'll sign," I said. "He's terrified of court." "And there's more," Diana grinned. "I sent the forensic accounting report to his former employer." "The architectural firm he consulted for?" "Yeah. Turns out he was using a company credit card for some of those Melanie expenses before he quit. They're pressing charges for embezzlement. It's not a huge amount, maybe $5,000, but it's a felony." Grant was facing jail time. "And Melanie?" "She's trying to sue for support," Diana sighed. "But since Grant has no income and is facing legal trouble, she's getting nothing. She applied for welfare yesterday." The divorce negotiation was short. Grant, looking gaunt and unshaven, sat across the table with a public defender. He couldn't afford a real lawyer anymore. "I want the house," I said. "I want my 401k restored. And I want you to assume all debt related to the Audi." "I can't afford the Audi," he whispered. "Then sell it. Or give it to Melanie to live in." "I don't care." He signed. He signed everything. He didn't look at me. He just stared at the table, a broken man. "One question," he asked as he stood up to leave. "Did you ever really love me? Or was I just a project?" I looked at him. The audacity to ask me that. "I loved you enough to learn your language," I said. "You didn't love me enough to be honest in yours." He flinched, then walked out. I walked out of that office a single woman. I owned my house. I had my savings. Diana managed to claw back most of it through the settlement. And I had my freedom. 6 months later. "I heard about them through the grapevine, Mrs. Gable." Grant avoided jail time by pleading guilty and paying restitution, but his career was over. No firm would hire an architect with an embezzlement record. He was working at a hardware store, stocking shelves. He was living with Mrs. Park in her 2-bedroom condo. Apparently, it was hell. Mrs. Park blamed him for losing the rich wife and nagged him incessantly. Melanie had the baby. A boy. My parents took them in. It wasn't the happy family reunion they expected. Melanie, overwhelmed by motherhood and broke, was a nightmare to live with. My mother was exhausted. My father had to come out of retirement and take a job at Walmart to support Melanie and the baby because Grant wasn't paying a dime of child support. They called me. Oh, they called. "Valerie, it's Christmas. Come home. Valerie, the baby needs clothes. Valerie, we miss you." I never answered. I blocked their numbers. I blocked their emails. One day, I ran into Melanie at the grocery store. She looked 10 years older. Her hair was unwashed, her roots showing. She was wrestling with a screaming toddler in the cart. She saw me. I was wearing a new coat, looking rested, holding a basket of organic produce. "Val," she breathed. "You look good." "I am good," I said. "Look," she started to cry. "I'm sorry." "Okay?" "I'm so sorry. It's so hard. Grant is useless. Mom and Dad are always yelling. Can you help me? Just a little? For the baby? I looked at the baby. He had Grant's nose. He was innocent. But he wasn't my responsibility. There are shelters, Melanie, I said. And government programs. You figured out how to steal my husband. You can figure out how to raise his son. I walked away. It was the hardest thing I've ever done, walking away from a crying baby. But I knew if I gave an inch, they would take a mile. I had to save myself. Before I completely closed the door on my past, I had one loose end. Mrs. Park. Grant had put her in a state-run nursing home a month after the divorce. He couldn't stand living with her, and without my money, they couldn't afford home care. I went to see her. I don't know why. Maybe to see the dragon without her teeth. She was sitting in a wheelchair by the window, looking small and frail. Valery, she squinted. Hello, mother-in-law, I said in Korean. She flinched. You came to gloat? No, I said. I came to say goodbye. I'm moving. Moving? Where? Away. To a place where people speak my language. She looked down at her hands. Grant is a fool, she muttered. And Melanie is lazy. I should have been nicer to you. Yes, I said. You should have. You had a daughter who wanted to love you. You traded her for a son who couldn't support you. I placed a jar on her table. Homemade kimchi. I had made it myself, using a recipe I learned in Seoul. For you, I said. She looked at the jar, tears filling her eyes. Thank you. Goodbye, Mrs. Park. I walked out of the nursing home. The air outside was crisp and cold. I took a deep breath. It was over. The anger, the hate, the need for revenge, it evaporated with the mist. I sold the house. I sold the lake house too. I didn't want the memories. With the money, I bought a small, chic apartment in the city, but I rented it out. Because I wasn't staying. I took a sabbatical from the pharmacy. I went back to Korea. This time, not as a tourist, but as a student. I enrolled in an advanced language program at a university in Seoul. I walk along the Han River every morning. I eat tteokbokki from street vendors. I have made friends, real friends, who like me for me, not for what I can give them. Yesterday, I was in a coffee shop in Hyundai. I was struggling with a complex translation assignment. A man at the next table leaned over. He was handsome, older, with kind eyes. Excuse me, he said in English. I think that word means resilience, not revenge. I looked at him. I smiled. Resilience, I repeated. I like that better. I'm Minjun, he said, switching to Korean. Are you American? Yes, I replied in fluent Korean. But I'm starting over. He smiled. Starting over is good. Seoul is a good place for new beginnings. We talked for hours. He didn't ask for money. He didn't ask for a visa. He just asked about my favorite books. I don't know if Minjun is my future. I don't know if I'll ever marry again. And honestly, I don't care. Because for the first time in my life, I am whole. I am not half of a couple. I am not a sister. I am not a doormat. I am Valery. I speak 2 languages. I survived a war in my own living room. And I won. My husband told my mother-in-law in Korean that he got my sister pregnant, thinking I was deaf to their betrayal. He was wrong. I heard everything. And because I heard, I found my voice.